of my generation. It's embarrassing and it's terrifying to put the target on your forehead.
Meryl Streep is not merely the greatest actress of her time, she is cinema's immortal heartbeat. The woman who transformed acting from performance into ritual, turning each role into a meditation on truth. With 21 Academy Award nominations and 3 wins, she did not simply conquer Hollywood, she redefined it, reshaped it in her image, and established a standard of artistry no other actor has touched for decades. For audiences, she was not just a performer, but a mirror, reflecting the weight of grief in Sophie's Choice, the precision of power in The Iron Lady, the icy steel of Miranda Priestley, and the quiet courage of Karen Silkwood. Yet behind the iconic roles and golden statues stood a woman who, like the characters she embodied, wrestled with contradictions, ambition and doubt, brilliance and fragility, visibility and silence. At 76, Meryl Streep remains a figure wrapped in reverence, but also in mystery, a woman who has chosen stillness and quiet after decades of carrying the world's expectations. To understand her legacy, one must begin not with the spotlight, but with the shadows from which she emerged. A shy girl searching for belonging. Long before the red carpets and Oscar speeches, Mary Louise Streep was just a quiet girl in Summit, New Jersey, hiding behind thick glasses and the ache of invisibility. Her father was a disciplined pharmaceutical executive who believed in order, while her mother, a free-spirited artist, encouraged boundless creativity. Growing up between these two poles of perfection and freedom left Meryl stretched, at times fractured, between expectation and possibility. She was neither the prettiest nor the loudest. She was the observer, the listener, the girl who often felt like she did not belong. Even when her peers elected her prom queen, she could not recognize the reflection they saw. "They voted for someone I didn't know," she would later say, revealing the irony of being admired outwardly while inwardly doubting her worth. At 12, she began opera lessons under famed instructor Estelle Liebling, and her voice soared, but something inside remained unfulfilled. "I was singing something I didn't feel," she confessed years later. That moment was pivotal. She understood for the first time what it meant to perform without truth, and she vowed she would never again act without belief. Even as she joined cheerleading squads and theater productions, her loneliness lingered, shaping her into someone who could dissolve into characters because, deep down, she was still searching for herself. Yale and the crucible of art. By 1971, Meryl had entered the prestigious Yale School of Drama, where talent was abundant and competition fierce. For her, those years became a crucible. To pay her way, she immersed herself in a punishing schedule of 12 productions a year, rehearsals that stretched into the night, coursework that left her drained, and side jobs that barely sustained her. The relentless pace left her body strained. By her second year, she had developed a bleeding ulcer from the stress. There were nights she considered quitting, filling out law school applications in secret, wondering if she had chosen the wrong life. "If this is the cost of art, I'm not sure I can pay it," she confided to a friend. And yet, something deeper kept her tethered. Acting was not simply ambition. It was her survival, the one place where she could pour the chaos of her inner world into something constructive. Each role became an outlet, a temporary sanctuary. By the time she graduated in 1975, she was physically exhausted, but spiritually fortified. Moving to New York, she took on off-Broadway roles, poorly paid, sparsely attended, but each performance hardened her resilience. In 1976, playing Helena in A Midsummer Night's Dream, a critic noted she burns quietly, but she burns through you. an early glimpse of the incandescent force she would soon become. Love and loss. The John Cazale years. Fate intertwined Meryl's rise with tragedy. In 1977, she met actor John Cazale, known for his haunting roles in The Godfather and Dog Day Afternoon. Their love was immediate, deep, and transformative, but it was soon shadowed by his diagnosis with terminal lung cancer. At the same time, Meryl began to secure her first screen appearances, her film debut in Julia, 1977, and, more pivotally, her role in The Deer Hunter, 1978. That performance brought her first Academy Award nomination, but behind the camera, she was caring for Cazale in his final months. She later recalled that every line she spoke carried the weight of knowing she was losing him. "It was the most beautiful thing that ever happened to me," she once said of their love. Being with him, loving him, and letting him go. Cazale died in 1978, and the grief nearly broke her. Yet, paradoxically, it also infused her work with a depth of feeling that audiences could sense. Out of devastation, a career was born not of glamour but of authenticity, of emotion honed by lived loss. Breakthrough and early triumphs. Meryl's ascent in Hollywood was rapid but never easy. Her first Oscar came for Kramer vs. Kramer, 1979, in which she played Joanna, a mother torn between maternal guilt and personal need. On screen for only 20 minutes, she delivered a performance so precise and human that it reshaped how audiences understood the role of women in film. Her courtroom testimony, her silent tears, these were not gestures of acting, but echoes of real anguish. Hollywood took notice, and with sudden fame came pressure. Yet Meryl refused to play the industry's game. She turned down glamour magazine spreads, resisted gossip-fueled interviews, and kept her personal life fiercely private. "I'm interested in what's real," she said. "Fame is a costume." Through the early 1980s came a string of extraordinary roles: The French Lieutenant's Woman, 1981, Silkwood, 1983, and, most memorably, Sophie's Choice, 1982. For Sophie, she immersed herself completely, learning Polish and German, losing weight, and living inside the haunted world of her character until it scarred her psyche. The performance remains one of the most revered in cinematic history, but for Meryl, it was a wound as much as a triumph. "It broke me," she admitted. For months afterward, the trauma of Sophie's impossible choice lingered in her body. Yet, it also earned her a second Oscar and sealed her reputation as not only the finest actress of her generation, but perhaps of all time. Redefining Hollywood on her terms. Through the 1980s and 1990s, Meryl Streep defied the conventions of Hollywood stardom. She was not a conventional beauty by the industry's narrow standards, and she never leaned on glamour to secure her place. Instead, she built her career on emotional truth, on roles that demanded intellect, courage, and empathy. She played whistleblowers, survivors, mothers, politicians, characters layered with contradictions and humanity. At a time when actresses over 40 were often pushed aside, she expanded her range, refusing to be confined. She became proof that substance, not superficiality, could endure. With each role, she reminded audiences that cinema could do more than entertain. It could reveal something essential about being human. The quiet force behind the screen. As her fame grew, Meryl's private life remained guarded, but quietly steadfast. She married sculptor Don Gummer in 1978, building a family of 4 children away from the glare of Hollywood. Unlike many stars whose private lives became tabloids' playgrounds, Meryl created boundaries that allowed her to thrive both as a mother and as an artist. Her choice to shield her family was not detachment, but a deliberate act of preservation, of self, of dignity, of love. She often said that her most important role was not on screen, but at home, raising her children with the same devotion she poured into her craft. The Iron Lady behind the curtain. Decades later, audiences witnessed Meryl's ability to embody power and vulnerability in equal measure. The Devil Wears Prada, 2006, gave the world Miranda Priestley, the cold, commanding editor of a fashion magazine. Beneath the facade of authority was a loneliness that mirrored Meryl's own sacrifices. To maintain the character's sharp detachment, she kept her distance from castmates. Anne Hathaway admitted she found Meryl intimidating, terrifying, but so real you could feel the sorrow underneath. That sorrow wasn't fictional. It was built from decades of missed family moments, the exhaustion of constant scrutiny, and the weight of keeping private struggles hidden behind a poised exterior. Then came The Iron Lady in 2011, where Meryl transformed into Margaret Thatcher, not only replicating the speeches and gestures of Britain's longest-serving Prime Minister, but also exploring the slow, painful unraveling of identity through dementia. She later said, "That role scared me. It felt like a mirror." Just a few years later, her own life began to reflect that film in unexpected ways. Public appearances grew fewer, her long marriage quietly dissolved, and she retreated into solitude. These weren't simply roles. They were emotional crucibles. Every character she embodied asked her to give more of herself, and behind every Oscar stood a woman who had sacrificed pieces of her soul to bring truth to the screen. John Cazale, The Love That Shaped a Lifetime. To understand Meryl's depth as an actress, one must return to 1976, when she met John Cazale during a Shakespeare production. He was already revered for his haunting performances in The Godfather and Dog Day Afternoon, but offstage he was a gentle, soulful man. Meryl was in her 20s, still shaping her career, but their love was immediate and consuming. "He saw through me," she later said. Their relationship was not about Hollywood glitz. It was about shared scripts, whispered dreams, and quiet evenings. But then came the shattering diagnosis: terminal lung cancer that had already spread. At just 27 years old, with her career on the rise, Meryl made a choice that would define her character forever. She stayed. She accompanied him to every treatment, carried him when he could not walk, and even fought for him to keep his role in The Deer Hunter, ensuring he could work despite his illness. Robert De Niro later said, "Meryl gave everything to John. She was his life support, literally." When Cazale's condition worsened, Meryl moved into the hospital, sleeping in chairs, holding his hand through sleepless nights. On March 12, 1978, he passed away in her arms at only 42. She was shattered. 6 months later, she married sculptor Don Gummer, a man who had helped her pack away John's belongings. To outsiders it seemed sudden, but for Meryl it was survival. She never forgot Cazale. His memory lingered in every performance she gave. Friends say that even decades later, she kept photographs of him close and sometimes listened to old recordings of his voice in solitude. That loss became part of her DNA, giving her performances a raw authenticity no training could teach. Marriage, family, and the illusion of permanence. With Don Gummer, Meryl began a new chapter that, for decades, appeared unshakable. Their marriage was marked by quiet strength, 4 children, and a life deliberately shielded from Hollywood's glare. While she stood on global stages accepting awards, at home she was a mother packing lunches, reading bedtime stories, and cheering her children's passions. All three daughters, Mamie, Grace, and Louisa, found careers in acting, while her son Henry pursued music. She never pushed them toward the arts, but her legacy flowed through them naturally. For over 40 years, her marriage seemed a model of stability in an industry known for its volatility. Yet in 2023, the truth emerged. They had been separated since 2017. There was no scandal, no public dispute, only a quiet decision to live apart, handled with the same dignity that defined her life. She still wore her wedding ring in public, and when she spoke of Don, it was with kindness and gratitude. Love, she seemed to believe, could endure even when togetherness could not. To imagine the most celebrated actress of our time living through the quiet collapse of her marriage is heartbreaking, yet also deeply human. She carried it the only way she knew how, with grace, silence, and an unshakable commitment to protect what was private. Grace under fire, facing jealousy and criticism. Even as Hollywood showered her with awards, Meryl Streep was not immune to criticism. In fact, her brilliance sometimes invited resentment. The grande dame of cinema, Katharine Hepburn, once dismissed her with the remark, "She's too cerebral, too technical," a statement that cut deeply. Susan Sarandon, another icon, admitted with a half-joke, "It's always Meryl," revealing the envy her acclaim sometimes sparked. Sharon Stone commented on her looks, suggesting she was not conventionally beautiful, a reminder of the harsh standards that still chained women in the industry. Even celebrated designer Karl Lagerfeld accused her of refusing to wear Chanel over money, a claim that spread quickly despite its inaccuracy. Meryl rarely responded to such attacks. She had learned long ago that silence speaks louder than defense. In a rare moment of honesty, she admitted, "Acting is not about being pretty. It's about being real. But sometimes, even that's not enough." Her endurance in the face of jealousy, lies, and whispers revealed not just resilience, but also the loneliness of greatness. Icons, after all, still bleed, even if only in silence. Wealth as a bridge, not a crown. Meryl Streep never treated money as a trophy to be displayed, but as an opportunity to extend the values she lived by. She donated her entire $1 million salary from the Iron Lady to the National Women's History Museum, demonstrating that her greatest rewards were never financial, but purposeful. She funded scholarships in honor of a lost friend for students of English and mathematics, believing deeply in the power of education to transform futures. She became a quiet yet powerful advocate for women over 40 in screenwriting, one of Hollywood's most overlooked and underfunded groups, offering hope where the industry had often closed its doors. Unlike stars who hosted extravagant galas or flaunted closets dripping in jewels, Meryl preferred classic wardrobe staples and modest choices, deliberately investing in meaning over spectacle. Her fortune, estimated at over $100 million, has always been directed toward impact rather than indulgence. For her, wealth was not a throne to sit upon, but a bridge to a better world. The House of Quiet. Today, Meryl lives largely in Connecticut, in a house that has grown quieter as her children have long since left to raise families of their own. Grandchildren visit when they can, filling the halls with laughter, but more often it is stillness that defines her days. Since confirming her separation from Don Gummer in 2023, after the world learned they had quietly lived apart since 2017, Meryl has chosen silence over spectacle, dignity over disclosure. She still wears her wedding band in public, not as denial, but perhaps as a quiet nod to the years they shared, a symbol of respect for what once was. There were no headlines, no tabloid battles, only the stillness that has always been her way. For a woman who has built her life on balancing immense public attention with fiercely guarded privacy, this chapter reflects her truest self, measured, graceful, and deliberate in what she reveals to the world. Health, time, and acceptance. Though Meryl Streep has never disclosed any severe illnesses, she has never been immune to the undeniable toll of time, and she has never pretended otherwise. During her years at Yale School of Drama, the intense pressure she placed upon herself to excel resulted in a bout of stomach ulcers, a reminder even in her 20s of the delicate balance between ambition and well-being. That early health scare became, in some ways, the first lesson in understanding that bodies are not invincible, even for the most determined spirits. Decades later, now in her late 70s, those lessons resonate more deeply. Her pace has slowed, her movements are more careful, her energy measured and preserved like a precious resource. But unlike many in Hollywood who wage a public battle against the inevitable marks of aging, Meryl has chosen another path. She does not chase youth with surgical interventions or cosmetic illusions. Instead, she honors the body that has carried her through decades of both public expectation and private grief. Meditation anchors her mornings, quiet reading fills her afternoons, and long walks across her Connecticut estate provide her the grounding she once found in performance. Her skincare routine is not a laboratory of reinvention, but a ritual of simplicity, built on natural care and acceptance. For Meryl, aging is not a punishment, but an inevitability, proof of a life lived with fullness and intensity. Rather than lament what time has taken, she has found peace in what remains, clarity, perspective, and the freedom to shape her days on her own terms. That quiet acceptance is perhaps her greatest performance of all, not played before a camera, but lived in the ordinary hours of her life. The artist who never retired. Though some assume that Meryl Streep has stepped back into a quiet retirement, the truth is more nuanced. She has not retired, nor does she appear ready to. Instead, she has become selective, choosing projects with the care of someone who knows her legacy is already secure, but who still wishes to add meaning to it. Acting for her has never been about money or the spotlight, but about finding stories worth telling, about giving voice to truths that might otherwise remain unheard. Her recent appearance in Only Murders in the Building reminded audiences and critics alike that her flame still burns brightly, that her presence on screen is still magnetic, still unmatched. But Meryl's artistry extends beyond her roles. She mentors young actors with the same generosity that Robert De Niro and Al Pacino once showed her. She lends her voice to female-driven narratives that challenge the industry's long-standing biases. She invests quietly in independent films that might otherwise vanish without funding, nurturing the next generation of storytellers. She has become not just an actress, but a steward of storytelling itself. Her career, stretching across more than 4 decades, is a living archive of consistency, depth, and empathy. She has proven again and again that acting at its best is not imitation, but communion, a sacred act of empathy that allows audiences to glimpse their own truths through her eyes. By continuing to work on her own terms, she demonstrates that artistry is not bound by age, and that relevance is not a matter of youth, but of authenticity. Preparing for tomorrow. At 76, Meryl Streep has made peace with the inevitability of legacy, not with resignation, but with intention. Friends close to her say she has carefully prepared her will, structuring her fortune, estimated at over $100 million, so that it will benefit not only her family, but also causes that reflect her deepest values. Scholarships, museums, women's initiatives, and humanitarian programs stand to gain from her foresight. This is not an attempt to build a dynasty in the traditional sense, but a gesture toward building a future she may never see but wholeheartedly believes in. Meryl has never measured immortality in gold statues or award tallies. She has measured it in the lives touched by her work and her generosity. For her, legacy is not something carved in marble, but something living, breathing, and evolving. A ripple effect of kindness, opportunity, and courage. She understands that the truest form of immortality lies not in recognition, but in influence. When she funds a scholarship in honor of a lost friend, she ensures that another student will have the chance to speak truth to the world. When she supports female screenwriters over 40, she ensures that stories often silenced find their way to the screen. When she mentors a young actor, she passes forward the torch once handed to her. Preparing for tomorrow, for Meryl, has never been about controlling how she will be remembered, but about ensuring that others have the tools to create futures of their own. The private sorrows that remain. And yet, even in the quiet of her Connecticut home, even surrounded by grandchildren's laughter and decades of accolades, there remains an unhealed ache. The loss of John Cazale, her great love who died of cancer in 1978 while she held his hand, has never left her. That grief became the wellspring of so many of her performances, a private sorrow transformed into public truth. It lingers still, not as a wound that bleeds, but as a scar that pulses quietly in the background of her life. The dissolution of her marriage to Don Gummer, confirmed in 2023 after 6 years of separation, also echoes in the silences between conversations. Though handled with dignity, without scandal or bitterness, the quiet end of a 40-year partnership left a void that no public triumph could fill. Then, there are the countless smaller sacrifices. The recitals missed, the birthdays spent on set, the simple family moments surrendered to a career that demanded everything. These private sorrows weigh upon her, even if she never allows the public to see them. She has always kept her pain private, offering it not in interviews or memoirs, but in the raw honesty of her roles. Every tear in Sophie's Choice, every tremor in Out of Africa, every silence in The Iron Lady, all were born not of technique, but of truth, of sorrows too deep to confess outright. In giving her characters her private pain, she transformed her own grief into a gift for others. But the cost of that transformation remains hers to carry, quietly and alone. The legacy beyond awards. The world calls her a legend. The industry calls her a goddess. But the truth is more human, and therefore more extraordinary. Meryl Streep is not marble, nor myth, but flesh and spirit. An ordinary woman who lived an extraordinary life, who loved deeply, lost painfully, and continued to give. Her 21 Academy Award nominations, the most of any actor in history, and her 3 wins are astonishing milestones, but they are not the full measure of her legacy. Nor are the nearly 200 major nominations attached to her name. Her true legacy lives elsewhere, in the courage of every young actress who dares to speak her truth because Meryl once did, in the persistence of every screenwriter over 40 who continues to create because Meryl insisted their stories matter, in the audiences who wept at Sophie's impossible decision, who laughed with abandon at Mamma Mia, who sat breathless at her transformation into Margaret Thatcher. She once said, "The great gift of human beings is that we have the power of empathy." And empathy has indeed been her great gift to the world. It radiates not only from her characters, but from the choices she has made, the causes she has supported, and the dignity with which she has lived. Awards tarnish, records fall, but empathy endures. That is the true mark of her greatness. A thank you to the woman who gave everything. So if you ever cried watching Sophie choose the unthinkable, or felt your heart quake under Miranda Priestley's icy gaze, or marveled at Margaret Thatcher unraveling under the weight of memory, take a moment to whisper a thank you. Because what Meryl Streep gave us was not mere performance. It was sacrifice, empathy, and fragments of her own soul offered up to tell stories that mattered. She did not merely act. She bled. She carried. She transformed her pain into collective catharsis. Very few performers can bleed on stage and still walk off whole, and fewer still can hurt so deeply and continue to act as though they've never been broken at all. That paradox, strength hidden within fragility, is what makes her not just the most decorated actress of her generation, but one of the most beloved human beings to ever grace the screen. In the end, Meryl Streep's true legacy will not be her 3 Oscars or her record-shattering nominations, but the unshakable truth she embodied: that art, at its highest form, is not entertainment, but empathy, the act of making us feel less alone in our own struggles. She has shown us that greatness is not measured by how loudly the world applauds, but by how deeply it listens, and how much of herself she dared to give.